You said the world needs power, I won't disagree. There's heat in the ground and the wind runs free. You call nuclear the future, but it won't power itself. Nuclear relies on coal more than coal needs itself. You said crypto was coming and demand would explode, that AI would load what the grid couldn't hold. But SMRs stay delayed, no ground ever breaks, and the public pays out while the promise remakes. You said it's the hour, but the plan's still the same. The technology is
hello everybody, welcome to Saturday, May the 17th.
And yuccas refused. Vented dry cast containers become the only refuge.
Hope you're doing well on this Saturday. Music's by James Lucet, musician, artist, filmmaker, and has the biggest collection on the entire planet of anti-nuclear music created by him. You can call in at these shows live, 709-589-4406. We are live. Hello, everyone. Here we go. So this means that's 19 shows out of the last 21 days. That's a good thing. All right, we're good. My apologies. It always takes a minute. I know some people become impatient. You're in the wrong spot if you're impatient. These are difficult subjects. Tonight is a pretty reasonable one. Terrifying that it is. Terrifying. I'm going to play this clip at the beginning of every show because of the censorship against me for one reason, because it's the right thing to do is the main reason. I got a pretty spectacular show for you tonight. He left his shadow, so he would have died that day. And the people that done it to him knew that. Here's your $50. Congratulations. You can pick it up in the morning. They would have went out and spent it on lottery tickets or something because he knew he wasn't going to be around in the morning to pick up his $50. Inhaling just one hot particle can cause a cancer, but there's not just cancers. There's many, many, many other illnesses and diseases, and you compromise your immune system on top of that. Just one particle. And a particle is different than an atom, by the way. A particle is part of the structure that was atomized in aerosol and ionized and radiated and released into the environment. But, all the cement, the water they pour on it has those exact same attributes. Here we go. We got some crazy stuff coming up in 6 or 7 of these, and then I got a crazy story about me for you. It's a scary story, but it's really interesting, and unfortunately, it's frightening for me because I'm the victim. Fallout from Fukushima causing problems 180 kilometers away. It all become no good. So these are legacy headlines tonight from the early days. This is 2013. It all became no good because of radioactive fallout. Contaminated wild vegetables, fish, wild game, water, whatever. Air, land, trees, pollen. Once radioactive fallout hits your country, you're in your country. Every species, all 8 million species are under siege. And before we get to that, we should get to the poll, I guess. because sometimes Geiger County, your top right-hand corner is alive, by the way. Was Japan the International Atomic Energy Agency, the nuclear industry, the worldwide universities and worldwide media cover-up of Fukushima nuclear event criminal and evil? It's evil. It's unbelievably evil to do what they done and continue to do. And now they're trying to promote nuclear. Tokyo press conference, deliberate cover-up of public exposure to Fukushima radiation. And the health problem they're suffering from is Japan's biggest problem. It's the entire planet. Continual, purposeful concealment of fact. That's what that poll is about tonight. In the first year, this is probably a horror, like if... I don't know, sometimes like the stuff so stunning, the documentation. This was 2012, so that's the first year. 865,000 extra cancers. The number of cancer patients rose compared to any other previous year by an extra 865,000. The only catalyst, of course, would be Fukushima. And the crazy stuff about this is not everybody got health care. Not everybody was diagnosed. Lots of people would have died of heart attacks and stuff like that. But so you get a full range of illnesses and diseases, not immune deficiencies and injuries and illnesses. Your immune system is under siege forever because it's producing a massive amount of white blood cells to attack the radiation that's sequestered in your muscles, your organs, and your bones, and that each one of these will pulse energy at the speed of light every second. And so your body tries to repair the damage to the millions of chromosomes and DNA in cells, or birds or mammals or whales or animals or puppies or whatever. Doesn't matter who you are, this is the attribute. Your body doesn't know what it is. So it attacks it and builds a tumor around it. Hence the reason there's 865,000 extra cancers of just people who happen to have access to doctors or health care and everything else, right? Just trying to build a picture before I get rolling here. Government simulation shows radioactive plume of Krypton-85. You heard of Krypton, Superman, right? The kids love Superman. They love their Krypton, right? Well, Krypton's real and it's really nasty. And the industry loves doing stuff like that. That's why the Hulk exists. They gobble up the Hulk and Spider-Man and turn them into superheroes for the nuclear industry to manipulate your children, same as the Simpsons and SpongeBob. And it's just an absurd amount. Almost every superhero now has some kind of relationship to the nuclear industry that makes them better. And of course, that's not true in the real world. So reactor number 3 with the MOX exploded on March the 14th, which was a plutonium X oxide reactor that had 8 reactor cores, 8 full reactor cores stored at the top of each of the 4 missing buildings. 36 reactor cores, counting the reactors, are missing. So each building at least 6 million pounds. That's being conservative. This was an event. We had an event. And the effects are forever and immediate on top of that, as you'll see. 88% of cesium in a radioactive ash might be at risk of being transported away from Japan's landfill by wind and rain. So this is the garbage they're burning is so radioactive, the ash is so radioactive that's left over, they can't get rid of it. You can't destroy the radiation, by the way, by putting it in an incinerator, 3,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. And they know that. And so why are they doing it? Because you're just liberating the radioactive particles and atoms back into the environment to hunt down something else with replicating cells. Because that's what it does. It attacks everything with replicating cells. And because it's not from the solar system, your body treats it as a foreign object. So do birds and mammals and animals and everything else. They're actually grinding it up and shipping it, the radioactive debris, grinding it up and shipping it to other prefectures. They're burning it in the local incinerators across the entire country. This is suicide and genocide and omnicide. That's what they're doing, though. That's not up for debate. None of this stuff we're going to talk about is up for debate. This is all facts, and I'll show you as much as I can in a short period of time. Fukushima will start burning radioactive waste 100,000 atoms. So a BQ is a pulse of energy, but that pulse of energy is a physical atom or particle that is anthropogenic, man-made radioactive material. So like cesium can pulse energy 600 feet, but there's nothing in the stardust that makes up our planet that pulses energy 600 feet, just man-made stuff. So there's a significant difference of man-made and natural stuff. Natural stuff are already acclimated. All species are acclimated to it through genetic pure selection. It's harmless, right? We live in harmony with it. They conflated the natural stuff in order so they can conflate man-made and fool you and trick you, and apparently they were very successful at that. It's 1 billion pounds of radioactive debris in the exclusion zone so like the minimum was 100,000. A lot of this stuff could be 20 million atoms per kilogram. Or if infinitely worse, 500 billion atoms, like in Tokyo, per kilogram. These numbers are just untenable. We've never heard tell of these numbers pre-Fukushima. We never conceived it either. There's no Hollywood shows or anybody else that had conceived these type of numbers could happen. We were guaranteed it could never happen. That's why the nuclear industry exists. Is government trying to contaminate every region of Japan by burning radioactive debris? If everyone is contaminated in a sense, nobody is. Well, that's not a true statement. Then you're all contaminated, so shut up. This is the contempt the industry actually has for everybody and every species. It's the most selfish industry in human history, and it's the most lethal and dangerous because the single atom in your body, and you put 200 million on the head of a needle, you can't see it. A single one in your body will ultimately, if you live long enough, will kill you. If something else, it's never just one. 300 times more radiation released into the atmosphere. Hundreds ill after Fukushima nuclear plant rubble was burned in a major city. Nosebleeds, problem with the eyes, throat, skin. That's the beginning of the radiation sickness. Once you have the radiation plague in your midst, it's forever. In other words, like the radiation that's outdoors, even if my house was brand new and all the material was sourced pre-Fukushima, and so there's no radioactive contamination, say, inside my home, which is simply not true, is it? But if there wasn't that, it doesn't matter because the radiation outside my house will pulse through my neighbor's house, then through my house and irradiate and destroy my chromosomes, DNA, and cells. So imagine what it's doing to your species in your meadows, in the biota, and in your forest and everywhere else. There is no government. There's just this insidious creature that has taken over that entity. People inhaled 85,000 becquerels of radioactivity in just 4 hours. And that only included iodine-131. But the biggest byproduct of the radiated fuel would have been the curium isotopes, which happens to need lead shielding 20 times thicker than the plutonium do. It includes only iodine-131. For every iodine-131, there's 10 times more iodine-132, 31 times more iodine-133, 31 times more iodine-129, and the list goes on and on and on for each other isotope. Can't have one without the nightmare of 1,000. This story is really important that I'm going to tell you. This was a video that was published 6 months ago. Now, when I found it a month ago, I didn't realize it was 6 months old right away. It was 6 months ago. I had left a comment saying, contact me next time you're doing a video. And I'll explain why I left that particular comment. So this was a month ago, though, not 6 months ago when the video originally showed up. So it was off. It wasn't no more. It wasn't like a 24-hour news cycle or a 1 week news cycle on YouTube where you can search through. And I've done that so many times I can't even possibly articulate it. The 24-hour news cycle, right? and you can look at every video, and you'll find a few regular trolls there from the nuclear industry. I'll introduce you to them actually too. But what was really interesting about this was I was cooking something, so I got off the video. I saved it, and I came back a few hours later, and there was a comment there from Forbidden TV. So it's a 6-month-old video. I only found it a month ago when it was no longer popular. I left a comment within 2 hours. How did Forbidden TV find me within 2 hours? Which is a known troll. I'll introduce you to him now in a second. How did they find me in 2 hours? How is that possible? And this is a troll for the nuclear industry that has created multiple accounts and sites to attack me with. And he doesn't hide that away either. So 6 months ago, when the video came out, why would he show up within 2 hours of me leaving a comment? Why would they contact you? Right? And there was he showed up within 2 hours. But somebody replied to me, McAllister, 10 hours ago. And he showed up with his other account, Dana Durnford, Kevin Blanche Debunked. That's his other site, which is this site right here. That's him there again. Dedicated to attacking me. Now, he's left comments stating that in the thousands of comments that he left, nobody's ever proved him wrong. That's his narrative. He refuses to acknowledge anything I show you. Nothing. He just regurgitates it. And there's a strong suspicion he's hooked up to Calm Down Charlie, a troll that's been stalking me for over a decade straight. But on that same video was Ernie Gunnarsson, a known troll for the industry. He's married to a pro-nuclear spokesperson who was a pro-nuclear spokesperson for the industry for 20 years. And I can show you all the evidence you would ever dream of to quantify my assertions. Same thing with Helen Caldicott. These are two insidious creatures that have hoodwinked anybody looking at Fukushima. This is Yoshi Shimatsu. He was a former editor for the Japan Times. He's retired. And he had rode a bicycle in the Fukushima nuclear wasteland. And lost most of his teeth within the next couple of weeks. And he had 3 Geiger counters with him, 3 different types of Geiger counters. They all broke. That's how radioactive. And that was in Futaba or Okuma, I can't remember, which are both on north and south, joined onto the Fukushima site itself. I had done a radio show with him for 2 years with the Jeff Rince Network on Sunday nights, right? If I wasn't out doing research expeditions. Okay. So how, in the name of goodness gracious, did Forbidden TV find my comment within 2 hours on a video that was 6 months old? How is that possible? Okay, so last night I posted this video. This is a fairly good quality. And this was August the 3rd, I think it was 2023. And I was doing a presentation, and this guy calls in from Japan, from Tokyo Bureau, Chicago Division. Yoshida Mishada, we call him Calm Down Charlie. He's been stalking me ridiculously for 10 years plus. Calling into the show and harassing everybody myself. I'm going to play this clip because I need that to bring everything together. I'm going to adjust the volume. It takes about 40 seconds before we get to. Because this camera, the aperture is stuck open. I can't do pictures. I can only do videos. And if I accidentally click a picture, I have to take the lens off, restart the camera, click a picture. That'll leave it open. Turn the camera off, then put the lens back on and only use video, right? So when you're zoomed way in over to that island, because that's one of our study groups for field studies, and it's good enough, like, ideally, the theory was I could shoot the video. I think that's Calm Down Charlie. Should we give it a try? Hello.
Hello, Mr. Dino.
Who's this?
Yoshida Machado, Tokyo Bureau. How are you?
Is this the Tokyo Bureau Chicago division?
Indeed, yes. Mr. Dino,
how do you like my-
about a new...
How do you like my T-shirt I got
We
for
want to
you?
tell...
Do you like my?
We want to tell
Do you like my
about
T-shirt?
a friend of Tokyo Bureau.
Do you like
we
that?
tell you about friend of Tokyo Bureau.
You fuck Tokyo Bureau. Fuck you too, you piece of shit.
Radiation
You shut
and
your
nuclear.
pie hole.
He know a lot more than you.
Who do?
You're stupid, man. He a friend of Tokyo Bureau, and he is instrumental in helping us launch Operation Long Jump.
How do you spell that?
Operation Long Jump.
How do you spell
Mr.
it?
Dino.
How do you spell it? How do you spell it?
Huh?
How do you spell that? Long jab.
Huh?
Long
What
jab?
you say?
You say long jab?
Long Jump.
Long jab.
No. Operation Long Jump. Get it right, Mr. Dino.
Long jab?
Long Jump.
Did you order one of my T-shirts I made for you? You probably got the pink. You probably got the pink one, right?
Stop avoiding the situation.
What do you want, scumbag?
With Tokyo Bureau advisor and friend,
Yeah.
Mr. Thunderfoot, you're gonna be finished. You're gonna be finished, Mr. Dino.
Yeah, I'm all shook up, eh? I'm so scared of you.
You should be. Oh, I would love to be in your shoes. Oh, you make me sick.
Hey, what are you going to be when you grow up?
Okay, sit tight, Mr. Dino.
What are you going to be when you grows up?
Sit tight. We'll be with you soon.
I heard.
See you later, Mr. Dino.
What are you going to be when you grow up? I heard you're going to be a big prick just like me. Which means you haven't got far to go, actually, do you? So there's an interesting threat. Well, we didn't know what the threat was. Turns out they decided this was an operation by Japan. This is an operation by the Japanese government to destroy my reputation, and they succeeded in that by the looks of it. And they're vicious. They're using Thunderfoot, too, as another way of attacking me, apparently. Let's keep going. So, here's what's going on is they got me hacked. They're watching my activity. In fact, that the debunk channel, for starters, came after me within 2 hours of me leaving a comment. Is really something. Now, it's not right to insult somebody without the documentation, right? So I insulted Arnie and I insulted Helen Caldercott, and I didn't quantify that insult. So I'm just going to play 2 little short videos that can leave you with no shadow of a doubt of what happened. It'll take me a second. Oh, Mr. Dino. What a creepy, disgusting creature, eh? Here we go. Back to the headphones. So, my other computer, because I put a new computer in the studio, right? It's just for doing the show only. I don't do browsing or nothing on it, right? It's just for the show. But my other computer, when I changed my site's name to Environmentalist Dana Durnford, the name of my computer changed to Environmentalist Dana Durnford on its own. It doesn't work that way. Someone got me hacked, right? Okay. So Arnie Gunnarsson, then Helen Calico.
Now, I built, the division I ran, built...
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to click on the video either. Don't like double click. I'm going to adjust the volume. That was my fault. I'm usually pretty good. So here's Arnie Gunnarsson. Now, reactor 4 is to your right. That's what it actually looks like.
Now, I built, the division I ran built nuclear fuel racks for boiling water reactors exactly like Fukushima.
So he built the assemblies, or the racks for the fuel assemblies, which are the reactor cores. For 70 identical reactors is this one that the United States have, the boiling water reactor. So if he didn't know in that picture that the fuel pool was gone, who would? And that's now the picture behind him, to be fair, I put that there so you can appreciate what he's talking about and what it actually is going on. Now, that's the top of the building, so 150 feet of the building is missing. But as you can see by the guts spilling out, and somebody like this, of course, had to know, same as Helen Kellicott, by the way, had to know, see, that they were gone. But he still hasn't admitted that.
And Unit 4 has always been my biggest concern.
Well, if it was Nessie's wife, Megan Gunnarsson, and she was a pro-nuclear spokesperson for the nuclear industry. See her shaking her head. Unit 4 was his biggest concern, not Unit 3, apparently. Let's keep going here.
If you watched our website, on the very first week of the accident,
he introduced you to Ian Goddard. Remember that? Who attacked me.
I was saying that if Unit 4 were to catch fire, you'd have to evacuate Tokyo.
He's showing you a picture of the building blowing up. That's his video. Okay. So why didn't he tell you Unit 4 fuel pools were gone? Because there was 8 reactor cores. So it can't be trusted. He was in that documentary. So was Helen Kellicott, who was nominated for a Nobel Prize. And look at the face on that creature. Only the devil could love. This is Helen Kellicott. Now she's asked, did the top of the reactor buildings look like this, or did he look like that? It looked, obviously this is what it looked like, but the official story looked like that. Here we go. Very short clips.
Let me ask you this. You've said that if the spent fuel pool in number 4 collapses, that you would evacuate your family from Boston. Do you think we would ever know the truth of what's going on there? And the reason I ask is because we've seen coverage in the national news media here in the United States from ABC News and others that take video cameras in, saying that they're being given exclusive access to number 4 in the removal of the fuel rods, which is said to have begun. And what we see in the video being shared here in America is a pristine interior building. It doesn't look like a building in which the top blew off in a hydrogen explosion.
The Japanese are very tidy people, and they have, by robot control and by human beings, removed the debris from the top of Building 4, and it does look pristine.
It doesn't work that way. You can't. It's a nuclear meltdown. On top of that, you can't go anywhere near it. These are remote control cranes, so right to take everything out of the way so they can put a cover over it. And as you see with my thumbnail tonight, I'll bring up that depiction again for you. Now, at the same time as these people, and the picture and video, the video will get better when I click on it. At the same time as Arnie and Gunnarsson and Helen which Helen done that same interview a couple of hundred times, made those same assertions. Arnie's probably done it 1,000 times. They're put on a pedestal, see, as you can see. She's got 14 anti-nuclear books. And she says the buildings look like this, not like that, as you'll see. Okay, so after this clip, I'm going to go through a bunch of headlines. We'll color it. I'll adjust the volume coming up.
I was standing is on top of what used to be reactor building number 4.
So that's BBC Rupert Winfield Hayes, ABC Cecilia Vega, CNN, CBS, Seth Dorn, the senator's son. All of them are going to claim they're 150 feet above that building. This is what got me hacked. Let me, this very short video, very important video. I made this in 2013.
The whole of this building was blown apart by a huge explosion.
We are here inside Reactor 4 at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant that was severely crippled during the earthquake and tsunami of 2011.
Of the decommissioning work taking place here in Reactor 4.
At the end of our tour, we were checked for radiation exposure. In 4 hours, I received the equivalent of less than a chest x-ray.
1,500 highly radioactive fuel rods inside this pool. They've got to move them outside of this reactor.
Okay. My anniversary videos, they chop chunks out of it. After 12 hours, they'll do that on this video too, and every other video. Okay, so let's cover some legacy headlines and find out why they're so scared. And what they're doing to me is, it's just a matter of time for it to kill me, clearly. They're going to kill me for sure, right? I've been at this too long. And because I keep, I take pride in what I do, so I get better at it every day. And because I cover, typically a lot of times I cover a 24-hour news cycle, I'm very relevant. And I'm very convincing because I don't have opinion, right? I don't have conjectures. I'm just dealing with facts. And so once you take all the facts, then you can extrapolate on your own. You don't need me or anybody else, okay? If everybody's smart enough to comprehend this, you just gotta absorb it for a few shows, and you'll be the most educated person probably in 1,000 square miles. I mean, the people that come to my show regularly, the people that participate in it, nobody's going to beat them in a conversation. There's no academics, no scientists, no journalists, and a public debate will ever be able to show their face outdoors again. All-time high radiation levels in the wells. So they dug hundreds of wells, drilled. They pump water up and they test it. We never get to see these tests, right? And it's all downhill to the Pacific Ocean. They're right on the Pacific Ocean. Here we go. Keep going. Oh, by the way, this study couldn't figure out what they were eating because we couldn't find them feeding. And I think it was 18 trips by boat. I had the boat out 18 times or something like that just for that area. Where they were raising their chicklets, their fledglings and that. And so there was 3 species. There was the seagulls, there was the cormorants, there was kittiwakes, which we call tekelasses. They're like miniature seagulls by looks. They're totally different. But they look like miniature seagulls, right? And they all like cliffs. But the kittiwakes like really harsh exposed cliffs. And they build their nest right there. It's not a very big nest, and so if there's any eggs, you'll actually see them. And if any of these young ones, they only got about this much room to stand up on. They had no babies. The cormorants were producing the most babies. They're deep divers, and the seagulls was about 4% survival rate that made it to the water as young fledglings. Couldn't figure out what they were feeding on. The seagulls in particular, we knew what there are fish there, but they're down deep, right? There's nothing in the tidal zones to feed on whatsoever. That's wiped out. And it took about 2 weeks, and so I was moving further up the coast, and there's a fish plant that does the crab season, the offshore crabs. And that's where all the seagulls were getting their food from. Or McDonald's. If you go to McDonald's, they'll tear the winch. If you see you eating in the parking lot, they'll actually tear your windshield wiper off, so you'll give them food so they'll go away. There's nothing at the low tide. When the tide is low, you'll never find them at the tide line. And normally you would see the seagulls would be dropping sea urchins and mussels and snails and shellfish and that from a high altitude above the roads and sidewalks. So the sidewalks all year long will be broken shells because birds don't take winter off, right? There's a 4% survival rate. There was no survival. And in fact, we know the puffins that year. These videos and pictures were taken. Had no survival, babies, up in New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, and same thing here. We never found them on a little tiny group. We never found any fledglings. There wasn't very many. This coastline usually gets 46 million seabirds a year. It's the biggest migratory run on the entire planet. And 6.6 million storm petrels on Baccaloo Island. I went out for 3 years and didn't find a single one. Not, to be fair, they're nocturnal. But, you got to appreciate what I'm actually like, how tenacious I can be. So I'm out there in the dark, and I'm circling that huge island over and over and over in the dark with the big floodlights. And you would see them coming back, right? Because they have fledglings. That's where there's 3.3 million pairs go there to raise their chicklets. And raise their fledglings. And so they're going to be coming back and forth. That's a lot of birds. So if you're out there in the dark, you're going to catch, you'll have no problem finding some coming back. I didn't even find feathers on the coastline. And now they admit that they're missing. They went somewhere else, which doesn't happen because millions of generations don't change their breeding grounds, right? And another thing about all these cliffs is they would be stained from the excrement from millions of generations. And when you go out there, the only spot you're finding a few stains is around that particular colony. And there was a colony on the other side, and it had about a 4% fledgling rate. This is not enough to replenish the population, and all of that food was dependent upon the crab fishery, the fish plant. Like the plot of a summer horror flick, all along the Canada's Pacific coast, mussels are dying. Bodies are swollen by cancerous tumors. Unprecedented mutations allowing cancer to spread from one species to another like a virus. Try wrapping your mind around that statement. Let me explain that to you, actually. This is madness. The whole story is crazy. It's crazy. So I have launched research expeditions for 6 years on the West Coast. And I've hit this in every direction you can imagine. It's hard to appreciate. And so the species, I went from Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska for 6 years. So the species to your left are developing cancers that spread. The snails will spread it to the mussels will get cancer and give it to the starfish will get cancer and give it to the 700 algae. The 700 algae will get cancer and give it to the 5,500 invertebrates without the backbones. The shellfish or Manila's little necks, razorbacks are giving it to the oysters and the scallops and the abalones and the gooey ducks and blah, 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 blah. Just an endless, incredible diversity. The species to your right, the species to your left are now exterminated. I went back for 5 more years, for 4 to 5 months a year on the ocean without coming home. Under siege the entire time. I've been under siege now for so long. I was under siege before Fukushima happened. They don't call me the bastard for nothing. From years ago. I had a real problem with depleted uranium too. I've been at this for about a little over 23 years. Hardcore. Back in the good old days. Things have changed a lot since then. So the species to your left are getting cancer and giving it to each other, right? Think about that headline. That's the most impossible headline conceivable pre-Fukushima. That's the most terrifying headline you're going to see tonight, by the way. Because The species to your left are exterminated. What would you rather have, birds and bees or nuclear? What would you have, all these species to your left, incredible diversity? What makes me unique is I was a commercial diver when I was younger, so I worked here. I worked in all these species, and all those species existed in 2011. But I used to work 6 hours a day on the ocean floor, so I used to do 100-day trips back to back, because I knew you would never be able to. Once they brought in the quotas, so everything was so-called virgin territory when I was up there, and it was open season. But you were limited, right? Your body can only do so much a day. When it comes to the sea urchins, you were just targeting 3 inches. So think about football fields of sea urchins everywhere you're going, and all the way up to, say, 8-9 inch sea urchins. They're in prime real estate. They're all the way down to 900 feet. But because if you're going to spend 6 hours a day, you're going to be shallow diving, right? And so the prime real estate is the low tide area. It's the most difficult spot to work because the air expands in your suit the quickest, right? The deeper you are, the less the air expands. Trying to work in shallow water is brutal because you're afraid you're going to get jacked to the surface with ground swells, right? Because the ground swells are still going to come down. So if a ground swell is 10 feet, and if you're working at 12, 14 feet, you're still going to get shoved around by that. We call it the washing machine. Because you never stop. You're always getting washed along the shorelines. But there you're only picking 3-inch sea urchins. You have a rake and it has a tip that's 3-inch gap on it. So you're not taking anything lower than that and anything bigger than that because the market only wants the 3-inch. So you're basically culling. And that real estate, of course, is always filled. That gap will fill in immediately because that's prime real estate. And you'll find these species in all oceans down to 900 feet. Football fields of that stuff. So cancer took out all the species to your left is what they were saying. Now, the picture to your right is of research expeditions. We went back year after year because if you take a healthy coastline, it should fill itself in. So if you plow in all those species, if you dig up all these species and put them in a transport truck and take it away, the ocean will just fill up that gap. And that a glass of water would have almost 1 billion creatures in it. The eggs, the larvae, the sperm, everything else of these species still is also considered phytoplankton, by the way. But you would still have those species also in the same glass of water. You have up to 1 billion creatures, 75 to 100 million of those were the bases of the food chain, the bases of the oxygen chain, and the bases of the carbon sequestering chain, the phytoplankton. That was wiped out right away. And so the species, because this will come up, these stories are going to come up quite a bit later. These species are exterminated because we went back for 5 more years. They didn't show up. So there's a big incentive to kill Dana. So one of the ways to kill me is destroy my reputation and destroy any funding. They've succeeded beyond their wildest dreams, I'm pretty sure. Or maybe I'm not sure, because when you look at it, when I first came public about Fukushima, and that the hate that came at me was something else. I guess they're used to chasing people away, right? It didn't quite work that way for me because I thrive on that stuff. It's like sugar for me. I love trolls. It just fire from my soul, right? You know what it is. Like if in the World War II, if you're over the target, you get a lot of flak around you, right? Here we go. Water with nuclear fuel is coming up from the ocean floor because when the reactors exploded, they ejected the reactor cores and fuel pools right out of the buildings, which is right on the ocean. And the worst case scenario happened at the same time was you had a tsunami. And so heavy radioactive fallout landed on tsunami debris. And the tsunami debris spread. At one point, they had 2,000 square miles, the size of Texas, debris field in the Pacific Ocean. So imagine all, this whole coastline of debris getting washed out from a couple of kilometers inland, farms and communities and shopping malls, everything getting washed back out, and heavy debris landing on it. and getting carried out into the ocean, and then, the weather would tip it over and the stuff would end up on the ocean floor everywhere, splitting atoms forever. It's the worst case scenario, see? It's a nightmare. It's already a nightmare scenario because you're talking about 36 reactor cores. Unprecedentedly huge mortality event happening along the U.S. West Coast. Die-offs are ongoing and severe. Unprecedentedly huge mortality event, 2016. I was out doing research expeditions at that time. And I was reporting on it all the time. Every time I come ashore to get fuel, I do all kinds of radio interviews, including with Yoshi Shimatsu, the former editor for the Japan Times Sunday edition, right? It's a very prestigious job. He was a forensic investigative journalist, and he had wrote quite an eloquent dissent about me being attacked and charged in a slap suit by the government after I came in from a certain expedition, where they gave me 6 gag orders. But all it does is fuel me. I went and seen a provincial court judge and had almost all the restrictions removed 2 weeks later. The judge looked at me and just shook her head at me. Prosecutor said, "Whose the hell is this? Where did he come from?" The judge goes like that to him. He just shuts up. She said, "Mr. Durnford, I don't see any reason to keep these restrictions on you. Your paperwork," she said, "will be ready in an hour." And so when I went out to the front desk an hour later, here was the paperwork. Everybody come over and shook my hand, because they know the difference, right? But it gave you some confidence, gave you some faith in that there is some system out there that, given the opportunity, will come around, right? But I've been under siege the whole time. Historical crisis along the U.S. West Coast. We're facing a fishery disaster, very never seen before thing. Should be exclamation alarm to the public. Extinction threat for the salmon runs. Loss of sardines, squid. Well, the sardines and the squid are, and the salmon, but the sardines and squid are some of the migratory species that millions and millions of seabirds and other species are dependent upon for 5,000-mile migratory trips, right? That the breeding colonies are dependent upon the sardines and the squid. It's absurd how many whales eat squid, for starters, right? How many other species? These are what we call keystone species. Sea urchins, kelp, massive sea star deaths, marine mammal strandings. These reports, most of these are going to be based upon my research, because I was out there getting the guts kicked out of me every day and under siege the entire time. 300,000 atoms a square meter on the ground, just fallout. These are absurd, just uninhabitable numbers. But you can't perceive it, so they kept you there. Radioactive iodine deposited in areas near Tokyo before the end of March only included iodine-131. You can't just have one isotope. It simply doesn't work that way. If you got one, you're going to have everything else in equal. So when you're talking about a huge number of iodine-131, you're talking about a huge number of just, uranium, plutonium, americium, neptunium, strontium. It's a very long, terrifying list. 76 trillion atoms of plutonium-239 released from Fukushima, 23,000 times higher than previously announced. Now, to be fair, 76 trillion is a lot, but it's nowhere near the actual numbers. The actual numbers were around 50,000 pounds. And that a gram, or 1/100th of a gram, would be about 4 trillion isotopes, atoms. So Becquerel is a pulse of energy, but you need a physical atom or a particle to make that happen. So it's appropriate to call it by its proper name, atoms and isotopes, because that's a pulse of energy. You can't breathe that into your body and it's stuck in your body and it's pulsing energy now every second for the rest of your life, right? Whereas a physical atom can That's its attribute. And so when the rainfall here in Canada, Canadian government study at Iodine-129, which is a 15 million year half-life of 220,000 atoms per liter of rainfall, you could have 1 trillion isotopes per square meter in your whole country, in each square meter. Now, plutonium killed all the animals in all the experiments. You typically get 3 tumors from plutonium. The biggest die, all species will die when they're contaminated with it, humans included. And that the dog studies, there's so many of them, it's ridiculous. It's cruel what they've done, really, in so many ways, because they understood the effects. They just kept doing it, looking for a different result. Where lots of dogs had the 3, like the skeleton, the lung, and the liver tumors. Most of them died by skeleton tumor. Skeleton contamination means you're producing radioactive stem cells. So all the developing species are going to be under siege. And so this entire planet's been under siege for 80 years. And you can trace the extinction. Like, if we didn't have the anthropogenic man-made radiation on this planet, you can't even conceive of the species that would be on this planet everywhere you looked. It'd be just incredible every day to look at the ocean in particular, and in your forest. It'd be just it wasn't just the ocean was a soup of life. The forests the meadows, the fields were soups of life too, right? When you into migratory species, 46 million migratory birds just coming through here each year for millions of generations. Well, they're going to have 1 or 2 or 3 chicklets, right? And there was an abundance of capelin and squid and anchovies and sardines and herring and everything else to feed them on. So it was amazing. Black out the sky, black out the sun in the middle of the summer when the migratory root species were coming through for many days at a time. Not all day, but for a lot of the day would literally block out the sun. It was normal to see 5, 6, 7,000 whales. You would slow your boat down because there were so many whales you couldn't speed. And I was always scared we were going to break the rudder on the boat, and we'd get stuck out there because I got seasick every day. And so that was logged into the logbooks. The Fisheries and Oceans actually has those logs. I probably got seasick more than anybody else. I just didn't know how to quit. I was too stupid to quit. Now at levels unknown to humans or machines, human rights, that was put in the logbook though every day. Dana's throwing up. You'd be working, right? You just throw up. Keep working. You couldn't let go of the gear because you could kill somebody, right? Professor in Oregon paper, Radiation Fukushima exceeds Chernobyl, now at a level unknown to humans or machines. So they've never seen this kind of radiation and had machines successfully be able to navigate it. Human rights violations on top of that, because it wasn't academics. You're not seeing any pity stories about nuclear scientists that died at Fukushima, all right? Or nuclear academics that died at Fukushima, okay? You're not seeing... Or Chernobyl. But the only people at Fukushima are the homeless, the destitute, the victims of society, immigrants who don't speak the language. And at one point, for a couple of months, Japan was passing a law to allow anybody with a visa working in their country to work at Fukushima. And we went after them every day as the top story each day. If I wasn't on the ocean doing research expeditions. See, and the thing about this whole freaking thing, it's absurd. It's an absurd story, and I document everything. Now at levels unknown to humans, machines, and human rights violations. Researchers too frightened to get closer than 100 kilometers from the meltdown. Tokyo tea leaves 2,700 becquerels per kilogram of radioactive cesium, picked by elementary school children. Well, you're supposed to abandon Tokyo when you have those particular types of catastrophic attributes, okay? Excuse me. Brutal censorship. Since they took down my other site with 25,000 subscribers, well, 24,800 for 4 years straight. I never gained one, never lost one. And this site, my videos will get shorter or longer after 12 hours. I got 10 viewers, 10 likes, 11 viewers, 10 likes, 10, almost an hour into the show. And because the stuff I showed you at the beginning, right? It's clear they got me hacked, because there's the evidence. They're actually stalking me on my comment. When I make a comment somewhere, they come in. Even a 6-month-old video, within 2 hours, they come in and stalked me. How is that possible, see? Let me go backwards. University radiation test finds 56 microsieverts. You're not supposed to measure in microsieverts. You're supposed to measure it in physical atoms. And denounced by Becquerels. So when you see a microsiever, multiply it by 750 atoms per microsiever. That's being very, very conservative again. At an elementary school drain, 20.8 at a government building, 20 times higher than the official numbers. Parts of a school playground, by the way, declared off limits at 0.25 of a microsiever. So 0.25 are considered off limit. It's 200 kilometers away. But 56, they still didn't. They've never, ever protected the kids, even come close to. Children and staff must wear hats and gargle. If someone tells you, because there's a radioactive fallout in your community, that you should wear a hat and gargle, you should throw them off a skyscraper as soon as you can, as quick as you can get to them. Radiology expert finds up to 45 microsieverts per hour near a school zone, 90 times higher than Chernobyl. So do you think if they're going to do it to their own, they won't destroy your life for 1 second? Are you that naive, anybody? Hard to imagine something more frightening than 5-year-olds marching off to irradiated school grounds. Playgrounds with Geiger counters strapped to their neck. They weren't even Geiger counters, they were dosimeters. They couldn't read them themselves, in other words. They would send them away to the nuclear universities like Taiwan, to places like Los Alamos National Laboratory, Harvard, Yale, Stanford. And I covered Harvard, Stanford, and MIT last week or the week before. Their original presentations to the community, videos, right? And we audited them, and just holy smoke, a bunch of lies. The videos are typically an hour long. It took 2 hours or more to articulate the lies they were telling, sometimes 3 or 4 times a sentence, and to stop it and show the documentation that proved they were lying in that statement. Let them say a few more words, stop it, another lie. It's unbelievable. And, you know, the videos they only been up a couple of weeks. Got no views. None of my stuff will get views. That doesn't mean policymakers and investors don't watch it, because you can be sure they do. Fukushima consequences are unlimited in time, space, and social dimensions. It doesn't have a limit. It'll be here long after the human experience. The biota experience. It'll wipe out all the fungus, all the bacteria, and everything else goes behind it. Why do you think you're having all these forest fires? Why do you think we're having these droughts? Because when you kill the bacteria and the fungus in the forest, the foliage litter doesn't break down, so when you get lightning strikes, this stuff is tinder dry now. And it floats a couple of 1,000 feet and lands, and then you got another forest fire. We've never seen that, because the biota always broke it down, right? And by proxy, because you don't have the fungus bacteria now in your landmass, then it doesn't soak up water. So when you get rain, you have flash floods. And because you have all this heat now, and you still find the ants nest out there, you go out and stick your arm down, and most of them in my area, on both sides of the coastline of Canada, and you don't have to worry about ants. They're just too dry. They need bacteria, fungus too, right? But the radiation never goes away. Radioactive rain caused 130 schools in Korea to close. And, of course, Korea is pro-nuclear now, this administration. Yet rain in California also had 10 times more. It was way worse than 10. Government answer to protecting children in Fukushima from radioactive fallout: wear long-sleeve shirts while at school and a hat and gargle. These are not humans that are doing stuff like this. There's no benefit. You're going to destroy their health, which destroys the future of the country. It's the most selfish industry imaginable. They're disgustingly narcissistic. Everybody in it. Narcissists. Japan's foreign minister stopped claiming the food is safe. Plutonium evaporated and spread around as gas after the Fukushima meltdown. All the animals died. And the plutonium. That's twice we talked about that. Let me bring it up. One of the studies for you. Just in case this is the only video you ever watched of me. You can't say I didn't do my all. My detractors will never do what I'm doing. My detractors will never make a video set there, hi, I'm Dana Durnford, here's my phone number, type videos, and say, look, Dana's wrong, or Dana's mistaken, or Dana's a scumbag, or I'm show you the information, because it can't be done, right? I'm not a scumbag. I got nothing to hide, that's why my name and telephone number is always there. Which makes me a target immediately forever, right? And the plutonium, and there's a lot of these, Dr. Ray McGilmedy from Loveless Respiratory Research Institute, New Mexico, which is the United States Navy. And they had 144 beagle dogs that they killed in that particular study with a single monodispersal inhalation. And deaths from radiation occurred 1.5 to 5.4 years. They all died within 5.4 years of tumors. Tumors of the lungs, the skeleton, and liver occurred beginning about 3 years after the experience. This is very important, by the way. There's a couple more parts to this that I'm going to show you that'll bring it together for you. Bone tumors found in 93 dogs were the most common cause of death. Lung tumors in 46 dogs were the second most common cause of death. And liver tumors were found in 20 dogs. So 3 different tumors in a lot of the dogs from the plutonium. Bone tumors were the most, though. The majority of the 144 beagle dogs, 93 of them, died from bone tumors. And bone tumors is a brutal way to get taken out. Tumors in these 3 organs often occurred in the same animal or compete. And I can show you an endless amount of this stuff. I don't need to because I'm an honest person and you'd be smart to trust me. And we're competing causes of death. These findings, you'll find it all over my site anyway if you want to go look it up. These findings in dogs suggest these similar dose-related biological effects could be expected in humans. But, here we go. It was discovered that the human kidneys are 50 times less efficient than the animals. So you're 50 times more vulnerable than the dogs. And the dogs, every one of them died. Okay. So you got that much into you. Now, the other facet of this story is curium isotopes, this was Loveless Respiratory Research Institute. Dr. Ray McGilmedy, lead scientist at the U.S. Navy's research facility called Loveless. Appropriate name, isn't it? Loveless. Forget the fact of the alpha-emitting radionuclide. Forget that fact. They're the major byproduct in the radiated nuclear fuel. And they need lead shielding 20 times thicker than you do for plutonium. And plutonium kill all the animals, and you're 50 times more vulnerable. And so this doesn't just spread around Fukushima. Wherever you found cesium or iodine or anything else, which is the entire planet, and copious amounts, then plutonium is there. And not only that, the biggest byproduct of radiated fuel rod is the curium isotopes. Forget about the alpha. It's the curium isotope is the biggest byproduct of gammas, alphas, neutrons, or betas. That's why I'm framing that narrative that particular way for you. Hawaii dairy farmers fight radiation by feeding boron to cows and goats. They can't fight radiation by drinking boron. What do you mean fighting radiation? What are you talking about? You're sick and twisted and demented. 6,000 atoms a kilogram. So when you see a Becquerel, that's the pulse of energy at the speed of light in every direction. Reckon chromosomes and DNA in cells in your bodies. birds and insects and mammals and animals. And your body has to repair that every second. It can't keep up with it per isotope. So 6,000 explosions per kilogram in wild mushrooms from Bulgaria. In other words, that's enough to give you leukemia, that kilogram. The elephant in the room is Fukushima radiation. Mushrooms are the worst ones. So are berries. That's why you're seeing all the emaciated bears. They eat 200,000 a day. The elephant in the room, a former U.S. government official, the elephant in the room is Fukushima radiation when it comes to Pacific Ocean animal die-offs. Now, I didn't go out on the Pacific Ocean because there was an accident in Japan per se. I went out because I had an absurd amount of documentation that all the species were being affected. We went out to see for ourselves. And holy shit, a 6-year nightmare. That is forever. That was just that nightmare will never go away. It can't, see? Researchers say massive decline of fish is throwing off the ecosystem. Population has collapsed. They're gone virtually everywhere. Whale numbers dropping significantly. Squid disappearing. Whales are all emaciated. And I got a show on the die-offs coming up. Hopefully this week I'll get to it. I find them difficult, really difficult to do. It's not difficult to gather up. And that's a bit of a problem too, unfortunately, because that's a major die-off is why that's happening. Squid are disappearing, other major die-offs. Alarming signs of ocean distress on the west coast. 2015, I was out on research expeditions when this came out. Record number of stranded seal pups, 2,000%. The normal limit was post-Fukushima. Right, what they're saying normal for any species die-off now is post-Fukushima numbers. These weren't normal pre-Fukushima. This didn't happen. Bags of skins and bones. In 40-year history, we've never seen this many animals. No. During the nuclear open ocean testing, when they were out there blowing up the ocean and they were doing atmospheric weapons, and all the underground testing is vented, by the way. There was major die-offs during that period, but it wasn't pre-nuclear industry. But Fukushima was a different creature because it was so much. It was 36 reactor cores. Each reactor core is a massive amount. Because they stored the reactors at the top of the buildings in 8 fuel pools. And there was 4 buildings with 8 fuel pools. They're gone. Not maybe, not almost. You go in my playlist and you'll find everything you could ever dream of. Mind-blowing die-off of seabirds on their way from California to Alaska, from New Mexico to Alaska. Unprecedented. Every bird we're seeing is starving to death. Yeah, because we broke the food chain, right? So, just let me explain that part here right quick. Now, I showed you the research expeditions fraction of that earlier. I gave you the explanation of what that was all about. So the species to your left, the birds could be coming along the coastline. They can't find their migratory. Even if they do, they'll go in and supplement their diet in here. And at the high tide line, there used to be 30,000 insects. Right? And so the species to your left are exterminated. So birds now can't find a migratory species, and they can't go into tidal zones where there's this incredible diversity and supplement their diet. You get it? And so when you hear about the colonies not having any babies, it's because there's nothing in the tidal zone. Because the colonies are dependent upon the local species. And the 27,000 islands in British Columbia, this is what their coastline, each of those islands looked exactly like that stuff there. And this is just a fraction, though, of what would have been there. There's incredible diversity and 30,000 insects at the high tide line. That food chain is gone. So that's why you're seeing a catastrophic die-off of seabirds. So when I was up there, at one point there was 1 million common murres, and they dive 600 feet all day. They feed on anchovies and squid and sardines and krill. But at the same time, there was 1.4 million Cassini auklets had showed up, and they also died, and all of them were emaciated. They couldn't find any food. So the Cassini auklets, on their migratory route, they eat microscopic animals. They eat the phytoplankton, the zooplankton, microscopic animals. But the common MERS will dive 600 feet all day. So you had two complete spectrums of the food chain disappear, showing up emaciated in numbers never conceived or perceived before, seen before, showing up emaciated. So that confirmed that my research was valid, right? That brought the validity to this research, which is just heartbreaking. You don't want that to happen, but that's what happened. Sicken animals, unlike anything the doctor's ever seen, eating themselves from the inside, cancers. Like you got all the, right? And I just showed you that earlier, where all these species got cancer. These species don't get cancer. What are you talking about? Right? They don't get cancer. That's what the official story is. They died of cancer. That spread from one species to the next, from mussels to sea urchins to starfish to gooey ducks to gooseneck barnacles to shrimp to krill to hang on here, I lost my way. Nobody even talks about Fukushima anymore. There's no more fish. The ocean is dying. It's terrifying. Fish are too hard to find, preparing for the worst. I was out there on the research expeditions during that. And this one. Sicken animals, unlike the doctor's ever seen, eating themselves inside from cancers. Now, in the entire trips of six years on the ocean, 4 to 5 months on a year without coming home, because you didn't know if you could raise enough funds to get back a lot of the times anyway, right? Because once you're out there, you didn't give a shit. I still had a pension coming in every month. That would fund the operation, right? But people chipped in. I'm not saying they didn't. Sometimes they couldn't, right? We got through it for 6 years. And there's a lot of people upset with me. But the research, you had to do the research. So that the academic communities couldn't say they didn't know, couldn't say they didn't have the documentation. We had to take that away from them, right? And then now, since that, we have to own it all the time. We have to hold this ground. That's what we do, 5 to 6 days a week now. Sicken animals, and the sicker I get, the harder I work. It's strange, isn't it? Unlike anything doctors have ever seen on the West Coast, they're eating themselves from the inside. Cancers, liver, pancreas, intestines shutting down. Infested with parasites because their immune system is compromised by the radiation. Immune to antibiotics because their body is under siege with white blood cells. They're not producing enough red blood cells because you have so much radiation. When you got radiation in your body attacks you with white blood cells every second for the rest of your life. It's pulsing energy every second for the rest of your life. And that's wrecking chromosomes, DNA cells. Your body got to try to repair that. And you got to attack the source with white blood cells. So as you bioaccumulate more and more, you're producing more white blood cells than red blood cells. And red blood cells carry oxygen nutrition. So you're much more susceptible to pathogens and viruses that were normally harmless and innocuous and benign, right? Unprecedented catastrophe that caused the loss of 200,000 sea lions. Carcasses littering beaches for miles in the Pacific coast of Alaska. It's not just the Pacific, folks. Right? We're quantifying horrifyingly the same attributes in the Atlantic. Complete reproduction failure. Unprecedented die-off has potential to be the biggest mortality event in state history. The most extreme they've ever seen. LA Times, ongoing fish famine along the U.S. West Coast, dearth of the food across the ocean. I was out there. The only person that was reporting on all of this was me. Because I was out there sailing the ocean, right? The coastlines doing species counts. And originally, the first year, I had always felt I was going to find an oasis. Because you got 27,000 islands, you got all these pinch points where the ocean has to rush through to get to the rest of the thousands of islands. And so when the weather was appropriate, we would target those areas. That would be the most oxygen. The most oxygen would go through these big pinch points. And you have a 19-foot tide exchange twice a day, right? So we're almost through this. Astronomical amount of radiation found in downtown Tokyo directly outside of government buildings. Tokyo is brutal. The extreme increase in mortality caused by cardiac diseases after Fukushima. The death rates might give the creeps to some people. In a single month, there was an extra, almost 13,000 people died of heart attacks alone. These are absurd numbers. And so this is 2012. Remember, they had an extra 865,000 extra cancers in the first year. And I showed you that documentation in the very first part of this video. Fukushima disaster contaminated the territory of Japan, the entire country, and the Sea of Japan, and Korea, and Russia, and Asia, and the planet in about 23 days. Global fallout background off the prefecture's coast. Well, here's Fukushima fallout French government study based on 23 days of cesium-137 at 1 million to 10 million times pre-Fukushima numbers per cubic meter of air. It's covering the entire planet. Cesium-137 pulses energy 600 feet every second on top of that. This is the French government, IRSN. This is not a projection, this is a study. You can't just have cesium-137. And now they're stalking me for sure. My comments on YouTube are, I showed you at the beginning. That's not up for debate. And how did I go from a YouTube name? How did my YouTube name, when I changed it to Environmentalist Dana Durnford, become my computer's name? Environmentalist Dana Durnford. And I'm not going to lie, that scared me today to see that. Like, it's fuel for my fire, don't get me wrong, but it scares me that they're that evil, that they're that sick in the head, that they're that demented and twisted, that they're that selfish, and they're that heartless, they're that uncaring for you and the rest of the planet. They're just focused on themselves. Anybody with that kind of drive to stalk me that much, you would hope could get a job somewhere else instead of an evil industry like that. Why work in this industry? Why work for something so evil? If you were working for a company and you were making, say, baby food, bottles of baby food, and you were working there for about 3 years, 4 years, they're paying you a lot of friggin' money, and you were living high. Good times. And you can go buy anything you want. You get credit for everything. You go want a fancy sports car, you went and got it. You want a swimming pool, you built it. You wanted to go on a vacation, whatever, you just went and done it. But anyway, one day you find out that the baby food, this extra stuff you're putting in the baby food, is poison. And it's guaranteed to make the kids sick for the rest of their lives. Now, are you going to keep the job? Are you going to kick up a fuss? Are you going to make a noise? Or are you just going to shut your fucking mouth and take your paycheck and not tell anybody? Pretend you're the hero, because everybody's dependent upon you. And you're a good person, and in their eyes, and that's good enough for you. You don't need anybody else to care about. Just as long as they don't know the difference, don't know you're an actual monster poisoning all the kids. And that's why when your brother's kid started feeding the kid that baby food, you bought him something else. Said, no, that stuff's not really good for you. Here, take this. Because you couldn't live with yourself. Did you ever have those moments? I wonder the people that are sent from me, did you ever have these moments where you just looked in the mirror and you said, geez, Dana's actually a good guy. He's doing the best possible, and we're destroying him, but he still keeps coming back. Hoping to to make the world a little bit better. Did it ever cross their minds, I wonder? The people that are sensing me, stalking me, did it when they look, they're sensing me and stalking me, did they see me being a bad person? Am I out there lying? Like Calm Down Charlie, I played that video for you at the beginning there. He doesn't believe I'm a bad person. He doesn't care. His job is to destroy me, right? It's nothing personal to him. He doesn't have emotions. He don't have apathy. He's not like me or you, right? He's got a job. He's happy with his job. He gets a good paycheck. He's got a bit of prestige with his family. They don't know he's a scumbag. He's not going to tell his friends what he's doing to me, right? Craig's not going to go around bragging to his Not that you have any friends, probably, but I'm not a bad person because I care and because I went out and done the research expeditions because I have a moral compass. And that I'm very capable of taking out the industry if I was ever given the opportunity. If I had a big foundation come in and throw $1 million or $2 million at me, I'm going to gut this industry. This industry has no way of surviving an assault, a full-on assault from someone like me, right? There's just no way. I'll bludgeon this fucking industry so quick. You have no idea, man. The industry does. That's why they're stalking me and harassing me and attacking me. And they're only hiring the worst of the worst to do it to me. The cowards are the cowards. The people they won't even give. The officials, Wall Street Journal officials, sharply raised radiation levels for residents to get iodine pills after meltdown. You know, people are attacking me constantly for all this time, but I'm not a bad person. And I hope one day the world will come and realize that I went through hell right to the bitter end. But because there was a moral thing that at some point in your life, everybody I hope will experience is that there's things that are more important than yourself is worth fighting for. And this planet is definitely one of them, right? 75 times higher than the World Health Organization recommended. So imagine being so evil, the official monster, raised the radiation levels for victims to get useless iodide pills 75 times higher than the degenerate agency. They're degenerates. Don't hit you as degenerates. They're just low-life degenerate monsters. That's why they got the job, right? And their kids will work in fusion companies, right? Easy life because of the scumness that these people are willing to do. Imagine denying them even iodine pills, raising it 75 times, not double, not triple, but 75 times higher. And that they wouldn't even acknowledge the fact that that's 75 was met immediately. That, right? It's just, there was so much released at Fukushima. Never forget how much was released at Fukushima. There's 36 reactor cores detonating in 8 fuel pools at the top of 4 reactor buildings. Reactor 3 is ejecting the fuel pools and the reactor cores right out of the building. Just 9 reactor cores ejected into the environment. Each of them are bigger than all the nuclear meltdowns in history combined. Doing a little bit of bragging here tonight, am I? Seems like. I don't like bragging. Sounds good though when you brag once. Blow your own horn once in a while. Cesium-137 hotspot detected in South Korea. 1,000% normal. The Fisher story now, nothing got there. Right, 2 years ago, in 2023, South Korea enacted that they're going to do 140 places around South Korea coastline to check for radioactive water because Fukushima was just starting to release it. Of course, when you look at this, you know that's not true, right? It's always been there. But think about the kind of brainwashing can only be orchestrated by the International Atomic Energy Agency with the help of all the media, the universities, and the nuclear industry. Nuclear fallout will engulf Taiwan, not just South Korea, like I showed you earlier. Will engulf Taiwan. People should stay home. They didn't tell you that in Canada. The United States, you're in the first ones getting pounded. Throw your clothes away. Shower 10 times. Then get the frig out of that country. That's the appropriate response to something like that. Tokyo neighbors cesium approaching levels found in Fukushima. The dust is 70,000 atoms a kilogram. These are absurd. You can't just have cesium. Whenever you hear cesium, kick a nuclear scientist in the nuts for me, will you? Radiation health specialists. Children with over 11 atoms a kilogram start to see heart problems. You can put 200 million atoms on the head of a needle. You can't see it. So how are you going to protect your child from 11? And how are you going to find food that's not at least 11 per kilogram? On this planet, post-Fukushima, is It's an interesting question I don't dare answer. If the fuel melts through the reactor, it would react with the concrete floor of primary containment, could add significantly to the total radiation releases. What they mean by that is when the reactor comes in contact, once it melts in the 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperature, it's going to burn a hole through anything. And everything that it burns a hole through, it cannibalizes that. It atomizes and aerosols it and ionizes it and radiates it. And that's so you're talking about a meltdown is like multiple nuclear bombs going off every day in releases into the environment. And think of a bomb as 1 million tons getting atomized and aerosoled in a millisecond, right? But this is different because you're chewing it up in direct contact with the corium, and that everything from, like, just the normal emissions from a fuel pool at a reactor site, the reactor fuel is still splitting atoms. That's why nuclear is dangerous for millions of years. But how come? Well, it's dangerous for millions of years. How come? Well, because it's dangerous for millions of years, Dana. It's because it's splitting atoms. The same atoms each reactor core would normally split for to power a million homes and businesses. When you take it out and put it in a fuel pool, there's no containment. It's still doing that. Where are those atoms going? Well, almost every nuclear plant is surrounded by farms. That doesn't frighten the living shit out of you. You need to go back and watch the whole video again. So as the meltdown consumes steel and rebar and rock and all the water you're pouring on it, it's atomizing and aerosoling it, ionizing and radiating and releasing it in elements we've never even got a name for sometimes. You have no idea what they got done to this planet. The species do. Well, they did. Japan's considered moving the capital away from Tokyo because it's not like a banana, it's not like a potato chip, not like walking in the sunshine, not like climbing a mountain. The material from the reactor is 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. It's even worse from a nuclear meltdown. And so something you can't perceive and you can't avoid by proxy, and with 2 million of them on the head of a needle, you can't see it, but a single one of them is 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. It's in your body pulsing energy every second. So if it's in your body, it's trillions of times worse than an external. An external is brutal. I believe the country would be evacuated if the number 4 fuel pool collapsed. Well, there's number 4. The fuel pool was 150 feet above it. What about reactor 3? How come they don't get no loving? There wasn't an academic on the planet in the nuclear industry, because this is almost 3 years old, or 2.5 years old, those pictures. There was an academic on the planet that seen that and didn't say the fuel pools are gone, the reactors are gone, everything is gone. And they decided not to tell you. And they rolled out Arnie Gunderson and Helen Callicotts and Christopher Busby's and the rest of them. And they put them on a pedestal, and they made sure you watched them when you were looking for the subject instead of me. We have Fukushima polluting the entire ocean. We're talking about how people should be dressed. Influential actor in the New York Times. So once you get this stuff in your body, you get a long-term immune dysfunction. If you inject flu virus into the mice, it'll kill the irradiated animals. Think about that statement. So irradiated mice, when you gave them a flu virus, it would kill them because their immune system was compromised. It's dysfunctional / compromised. In normal animals and humans, this isn't the case. So the immune system is compromised. It's forever. It's not a long period of time. It's forever because radiation has that particular attribute where it's pulsing energy almost at the speed of light forever, right? In the context of a human experience anyway. For long periods of time after radiation exposure. Now, if you're talking about external doses, that's true again. But when it's in your body, it's pulsing energy, it's killing all these chromosomes, cells, and DNA and everything else. It can't repair that every second. So you have all of these opportunities to create a cancer, right? Because you haven't been able to flush them out of your body. So you should drink water at night, a glass of water in the morning when you get up to help flush your body, because that's what your body does when you sleep. The concept is we're generating damage which is cascading forward. Radiation damage is often remembered within the cell. So they've shown, at least in the brain and lung and other tissues, you get these kinds of pro-inflammatory responses and this is an underlying a lot of the effects in the radiation exposures, is you have damaged so much chromosomes and DNA in cells, you can't repair it every second. Your body's attacking everything, trying to fix it every second. It can't do that with white blood cells, and it's attacking the source, trying to build a sarcophagus around it every second, because it pulses energy almost at the speed of light every second. Your body's trigger is to attack it because it's not an element from the solar system. Your body doesn't recognize it. So 1 million atoms per kilogram of cesium detected at the Fukushima school after being decontaminated. They're just going to leave it. So that tells you this industry has no redeeming qualities whatsoever. Not one. Not a single one. It has no right to exist. They're gone to war against you, and you better get busy and go back and win this war. They're gone to war against you for 80 years. But they're terrified of you, and everybody has to start somewhere. Everybody got to put their first foot down somewhere, right? Unstoppable contamination of the Pacific Ocean. Unstoppable contamination. Former Japan official. Unstoppable contamination. The tanks were all empty, right? The tanks were built. Tanks were built to manipulate you into thinking that they had some control. Everything was ejected out of the buildings right away. Like if you pour water over the remains, you put that into a tank, the tank's going to melt down because you're going to have gammas, neutrons, betas, alphas all gathered up right in the bottom of the tanks right away. Fuel particulates. So you'll have a meltdown in the tank. Not only that, you know, they acknowledge 2.2 sieverts of beta per liter, for instance, in just one instant. That's 1.4 million per tank, sieverts we're talking about. And then 3 or 4 sieverts is a lethal dose to a human. So you're talking 1.4 million sieverts trying to walk past the tank would be a lethal dose. You have no way of filtering here because the filters would have to be 6 feet thick lead and then 6 feet of zirconium, or not zirconium, but another buffer in between it before you can even get near it. So it doesn't work that way. You can't step past the hoses. Hang on. The wave of radiation would be 10 times more than the entire world's nuclear tests combined. That's if only one reactor melted down. We had 36 reactors ejected into the environment. And each reactor was massive compared to Chernobyl. Chernobyl was brutal. There was a graphite reactor. These were pure uranium, pure plutonium. Ambassador writes to the UN Secretary General, "It's no exaggeration to say the fate of Japan and the whole world depends on number 4 reactor." What about number 3? Right, look over here. Don't look right there, see? Number 3 blew up before number 4 blew up. In that picture. And number 1, right? Looks like they got me froze. Looks like they got me froze up here. Yeah, they got me froze up, folks. Oh, it's a pretty good video, I thought. My video's frozen up on my side. Which is weird, eh? So I can control those, but I can't control the other. Oh, I got that one. Oh, I got control again. U.S. bans agricultural fishery products from 14 prefectures. The ban was in place by 55 countries for a decade. Not Canada. Canada's not a country, right? A couple of things to take into consideration, by the way, is they never stopped growing food right alongside the nuclear meltdowns. And they picked up 30 million one-ton bags in just 3% of the prefecture. Just to cover all bases, because we made it. I'm going to play this clip of BBC in 2013. You're going to have TEPCO saying they got no control of the water whatsoever in 2013, all the way up to 2013. And they have 1,000 tanks, and they're going to talk about that. They're going to tell you that the tanks are all full from the aquifers that were underneath the buildings. And that's not true either. But that was the cover story. And this is really important video. Let's we'll play that over here.
Fukushima plant sits smack in the middle of an underground aquifer. Deep beneath the ground, the site is rapidly being overwhelmed by water. Beneath the surface, water flows downhill and into the basement of the damaged reactor buildings. There it is contaminated with high levels of radiation. To stop the groundwater flowing on into the nearby ocean, engineers are building an underground barrier. But that is causing the groundwater level to rapidly rise. It's now so high the water will soon reach the surface. Then it will start flowing overground into the sea. This week, the company that owns Fukushima, TEPCO, made this disturbing admission.
We understand that this water discharge is beyond our control, and we do not think the current situation is good.
Outside experts say it's now clear TEPCO is incapable of handling the cleanup at Fukushima. It's time for the Japanese government to step in. The situation is already beyond what TEPCO can handle, he says. If it were possible to take proper measures, they would have done it already. It's not as if TEPCO is refusing to do what they can. They're doing everything they can, but there are no perfect solutions.
Right, they got no control. And see those tanks, the blue ones? They're small tanks. And the last Saturday I done a video, those tanks are all missing. That's a great video. It's about an hour long. This picture showed up and all the tanks were missing. And there's no way they can account for it. Dirty, dirty, dirty. So they've been missing for quite a few years.
Even if the government does step in, it's not clear what it can do. The only other solution is to pump out the contaminated groundwater and put it in storage tanks. But after just 2 years, the site is already jammed with more than 1,000 giant tanks. Most of them are already full up.
Right, 1,000 tanks, most of them are full up. This is 2013. There is no filtration. The Arriva system was never used. It was made, but it wasn't meant to be used. It was meant to be on TV to convince you that they have it under control and that they can do such a thing, right? Chernobyl was 600 miles away from the ocean. These are right on the ocean.
At least 400 tons of new water pours into the site every day, and it's going to continue for years and years. Fukushima's water crisis has only just begun. Rupert Wingfield-Hayes, BBC News in Tokyo.
And you can see in this picture what's left of Reactor 4. There's the top of Reactor 4 right here. This is supposed to be a 190-foot building way up here is where the fuel pool's beyond, above my head. They built this contraption, doesn't physically touch the building because, as I showed you earlier, it has no integrity, right? So all the tanks, they said, were full, but the reality of it is it would all went straight into the ocean. Nothing is in the tanks. And we know that because of the numbers. You can't fill the tanks up and then get back and build another tank alongside of it or filter it. You can't step over the hoses or the pipes. And not only that, the numbers they're talking about, when you do the numbers, it works out to a garden hose split 4 ways. That's what they were spraying on each reactor. It was 1/4 of a 3/8 inch garden hose with 30 pounds per square inch of water, which works out to 130 tons a day or something. You can go to, if you go to my playlist, you'll find the videos on the water dedicated to the tanks. I show you all the documentation. You can take the stuff in the court and win any case against them you want to. Study finds 12 millisieverts average thyroid doses internal radiation. Internal, 12,000 microsieverts. Internal. They were expecting cancer, so they got 6 out of 10 of these children had diabetes. The forest, because they only picked up 30 million one-ton bags, was just in farmlands in the communities. You can't decontaminate the forest. So every time the wind blows, everything is recontaminated within 24 hours. Every gust of wind showers, not just cesium, but perpetual types of isotopes, uranium, plutonium, americium, neptunium, strontium, all over the villages. Plutonium-241 from Fukushima, 70,000 times more than atomic bomb fallout. It was infinitely worse than that. You had 36 reactor cores, a pure uranium, pure plutonium meltdown. Just the numbers that they acknowledged, 2%, would have worked out to around 50 to 60 million pounds of plutonium. Let's just burn through the rest of it. Doomsday-like releases. If a fire in a Unit 4 fuel pool, it would be a global catastrophe. There's Unit 4. Officially, none of the stuff I'm showing is true officially. How do you... I didn't make all this up. I didn't Photoshop all this. I didn't go out and bleach the coastline, which is comments they put there for years. Go back and look up old videos when I was out on the ocean on Fukushima, and you'll see Dana's out there bleaching the coastline with 45-gallon drums, and then he's going taking pictures. The coastline's perfectly safe. So I told you they knew what I was saying was true, see? What an incredible lie. And that lie was spread with several hundred videos that I found. Tokyo drinking water unsafe for infants. This means water's unsafe for everybody else. 12 million yen to censor Twitter, which was around 56 million US dollars. To censor Twitter with people like me and a few other people, 5 or 6 people. Radioactive dust reported in Tokyo after recent fog, 4,000 atoms a kilogram in fog. In fog, 2013. In the fog. You can't just have cesium. South Korea, which officially says nothing land there, had 6 million pounds since 3/11 in 2013 they shipped back. 6 million pounds. The official story, this administration says nothing got there, even though we have all the evidence that it was incredibly radioactive in South Korea. Almost the entire city of 300,000 people have radiation levels high enough to get decontaminated by the government. You can't decontaminate people, by the way. Like, you can't stay in that environment. You got to leave there. There's no species on the planet with an autoimmune trigger to defend against the radiation. You can't stay there. And leaving people there is beyond... It's the only reason they get away with it because there's so many scumbags out there willing to do it for them, right? The industry just has a wealth of scumbags at their beck and call. They get paid really well. Like the trolls that are stalking me online, for goodness sakes. That's terrifying, eh? What I showed you at the beginning. They're stalking my comments in real time here on YouTube. Are they removing them, I wonder? Fukushima disaster beyond a cover-up. Japan thinks they can get away with tricking the masses. Well, they did. Officials in TEPCO cannot be trusted. They're lying to the cameras. There was dissenting voices in the first couple of years. Quite a bit of it, too, right? Where are they now? 40 million becquerels of iodine-131. A single bit of kelp off California because it gets washed down to the coastline, and kelp is known to aggregate it. You can't just have iodine-131. Seawater is being poisoned at a continuous rate from Fukushima, and the source of which life depends on. I made this for us. We'll keep going. We're not very far away, actually. What we got left here? 5, 10, 15, 20. That's not very much. I can get through this pretty quick sometimes. I'll try harder. They found plutonium in every sample, which means wherever you find Fukushima radiation, which is the entire planet, you find plutonium. And not good at all. Pre-Fukushima, 100 becquerels a kilogram was nuclear waste. After, you can go ahead and eat it. But they're not checking for anything. You can't just have cesium. You can't just check for cesium. It's criminal and evil what they're doing. Fukushima women are losing their hair, resemblance to chemotherapy. Everybody is now. Obesity rates doubled in Japan in the first year, which is a marker for radiation brain damage. So the whole population has brain damage to have those particular statistics, right? In the United States, 74% are obese now because they were poisoned heavily with the radioactive fallout and food and the radioactive water. And it's almost 90% in Canada because Canada removed all restrictions on food from the nuclear wasteland after 93 days. The evilest thing you could do because Japan couldn't ship it anywhere, only to. That's right, Canada. TEPCO researchers says so the most radioactive food came here. And the health consequences are catastrophic. Everybody's sick. Every street, every house. TEPCO researcher says it's impossible to contain radioactive water. You can't get a doctor here because they're overwhelmed. Wastewater leaked from Fukushima plant. Japan's government has lost all credibility. Newborns at 1,140 microsieverts. Just absurd doses. For the thyroid. So newborn producing radioactive hormones immediately, in the womb included. And there's a lot of double headed, double arms, missing digits, aborted babies. Did not include, there's a lot of only counted food and water, did not include inhaled radioactivity, did not include the first 10 days when iodine and other short-lived isotopes peaked. 80% of the residents in one place have radioactive iodine in the thyroid at 87,000 microsieverts. Not some residents face potential health risks, they all do, for goodness sakes. A single atom is catastrophic. 87,000 times 750 atoms. This is why they had 865,000 extra cancers in the first year alone. This is why the death rates were giving people the creeps. 29,000 atoms per square meter underground, radioactive fallout. In Tokyo, these are not high radiation levels, these are holy shit levels. I mean, there's at least 1 million people left Japan in the first couple of weeks, just left the country. They were the smart ones. They're dumping huge amounts of Fukushima contamination into the Pacific, every direction, from the rivers to the estuaries. Radioactive iodine in 50% of the children at 35,000 microsieverts. 50%. And the government standards for radioactive cesium came to effect in April 2012, the next year. They weren't even checking people and checking your food, everything in the first year for the most part. Official blasted Japan's government over Fukushima. Such immoral people. That's being played. Criminals and evil criminals at that. Let the radioactive substances flow out freely and said nothing while contaminating the ocean is absurd. Now they're trying to cover the whole thing out. Well, they haven't got much resistance, do they? There's just a handful of us left. There's so many scumbags every day. It's absurd. But there's only about less than 5 people that are sincere. High levels of radioactive material found in Tokyo. The sewage is too radioactive to get rid of. The garbage is too radioactive to burn what they do. And the ashes are so radioactive they can't get rid of it. The sediment from the water filtration facilities is so radioactive they can't get rid of it, for goodness sakes. The sewage, they can't get rid of it. Fukushima is the worst case, disaster is the worst case of nuclear contamination in history. And it's building up to it's an extinction event, right? I showed you that earlier. Nearly 5,000 nuke plant workers suffered internal radiation exposures after visiting Fukushima. And I know what you're going to say. Dana, they have paper suits on. Yeah. Good one. Local government to consider testing the irradiated population. Sure they are. Fukushima disaster to go almost to infinity. It'll never be resolved. Radioactive cesium report in Kellogg cereal from Japan. 11 becquerels per kilogram is enough to give children holes in their hearts. Who eats Kellogg cereal, I wonder? Sheep, goats? Not kids, surely. It's true that about 70% of the Japan territory is polluted. Polluted is being polluted. Tokyo contaminated with highly toxic radiation. And experts are worried about catastrophic health effects. I mean, they had 865,000 extra cancers in the first year. And cancer is just one of the many illnesses and diseases, not immune deficiencies and injuries and illnesses. 35.8%. It used to be 1 in a million children. Now it's 13,646 out of 38,200. Which is 35.8%, which when you scale it up, it used to be 1 in a million pre-Fukushima. That's 358,000 out of a million you're talking about here. 14,200 children out of 100,000 need open heart surgery because of congenital heart disease post-Fukushima. That's symmetrically across the entire country, by the way. Cover up of massive explosions at Fukushima Reactor 3 fueled with plutonium. Cover up. The entire nuclear core ejected into the environment. Really? I didn't know that. That's Reactor 3. Entire nuclear core ejected into the atmosphere. And so they're stalking me in real time in the comment sections on videos that are even 6 months old. They're able to find my comment right away. And they're ones, you know, like I showed you at the beginning, that documentation. That's some crazy ass shit, man. That's some crazy ass shit. That's what that is. I didn't have the phone here with me. That happens sometimes. Alrighty. Stay out of Japan. Off the west coast. If you can. If you can't. So that's it. Whoa. James got another song out. That birdie pop was so good, eh? Holy shit, was that ever good. Should have played that twice last week. James got birdie pop. That was such a fun song. A terrible story, right? Birds are exploding. That's based on a true story that came out. We got nuclear Belgium. Yeah, because Belgium just announced they're going to keep their nuclear plants open? I can't remember. I know Taiwan, last nuclear plant closed down today. That's why I'm in such a good mood. You see infant mortality drop right away. There we go. I pulled off another show. This is a really important show for me today. I'm going to adjust the volume on my side. I want to make sure the video is, it looks like it's in, it usually is, isn't it? I always check though. I'll close the poll down after. Thanks everybody, have a great night, great day tomorrow. I'm still in recovery mode, but I got another show on, so that's a good thing. Have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow.
"100 hands, reverse the law. Phase 1 set, now put on pause. They claimed the grid could not endure and fed the myth of power pure. The fuel was buried, not the plan. It only waits for votes to stand." From all they stacked the vessels deep. Sea hands ran long, though did not sleep. No chant was sung, no grave was raised. Just softer lights in western bays. A farmer passed through fields unclaimed. No one asked what wasn't named. Nuclear Belgium, hear the ground. Not a soul to turn it down. Nuclear Belgium, soul that's clean. Xenon-133, then turned the page before the plea. The cause they pitched became a door, a lease renewed without a floor. The mask was spun in policy, but no one asked the river's fee. Nuclear Belgium, hear the ground, not a soul to turn it down. Nuclear Belgium, sold as clean, ballots casted, elites decree. Nuclear Belgium, built to last, but the river learns too fast. Now tell the child in Malta Day what steams beneath the concrete base. Dessel's drums in Toomey lie, and NATO carries what we weigh. The wind from Flanders bends its back, the scaffold stands but none look back. Nuclear Belgium, hear the ground, not a soul to turn it down. Nuclear Belgium, sold as clean, ballots casted, elites decree. Nuclear Belgium, built to last, but the river learns too fast.
Holy shit, I love it. That was friggin' awesome, man. Have a great night, everybody. Get over there and give him a thumbs up, for goodness sakes. That was amazing. Unbelievable. Let me see. All right. Thanks for participating, everybody. Have a great night. We'll see you on the next show. Take care now. Get over and subscribe there and give him some thumbs up. Put that in your favorite. It was amazing.